Hey, Richard Meller here again from Facts for Working People, and I just want to bring a report, just follow up on some of the stuff about the situation in Kentucky. You know, on the blog through video and writing, we've followed what happened last week when teachers shut down the schools for about 6 days. They violated an agreement between the union leadership and the state to keep them open and to not call off work, and they called in sick, and they couldn't get the state couldn't get enough subs to scab on them, and so that happened last week, and now we reported also on this that the Wayne Lewis, who's he's the education commissioner, in response to this, has demanded the names and addresses, the information on the teachers that called in sick. This is the retaliation for doing so. And I talked to some folks in Kentucky today and took some, just got some notes down in here. The Kentucky Department of Education still wants, and through Wayne Lewis, still wants a list of teachers who participated in the sick-outs. They are the Jefferson County, which includes St. Louis. The Jefferson County Public School Board of Education issued a resolution asking Education Commissioner Wayne Lewis to withdraw that request, but he's refused. And he gave a statement. He says he wants the names, but promises to not punish those teachers if school remains in session. In other words, this is an act of violence. In other words, I want you to give up your names, but don't do anything. If you do anything, I'm going to use it against you. It's garbage, and it's terrorism. That's what it is. It's a state terrorism, a form of economic terrorism. And so he says, I've got a statement from Wayne Lewis here. He says, I maintain the request for names, but I will definitively state that no disciplinary action will be taken against teachers if there are no further work stoppages. Oh, how nice of you. The agreement between JCBS, the Jefferson County Public Schools, and Jefferson County Teachers Association proved to not be enough to keep schools open, and Jefferson County students missed sick days in 2 weeks. That's an extremely important sentence. Don't let that go by you. That refers to the agreement the leadership of the union and the bosses, basically, the state, made, that the rank and file violated, that the rank and file walked over. This is what we have to do if we want to win in the labor movement. We are fighting two wars, two fronts. The union leaders, the bosses, of course, which is an easy word for most people, and the policies and our own union leadership who have obsessed with concessions. They refuse to fight and mobilize a real resistance to this offensive of capital against American working class people. And so he continues, Wayne Lewis, we are requesting this information so that we can have assurance that districts have policies in place to protect school days and student instructional time. In the coming days, I'll be reviewing the submissions from districts to determine if all have sound policies in place and to determine whether next steps are needed. The bottom line is kids need to be in school. It's disgusting. They're shutting schools. They're closing schools. The teachers are working in conditions it's almost impossible to overcome. Of course, there's bad teachers, but it is bad everybody at times. But it's impossible for teachers to overcome a crisis, which is a social crisis. It's social in nature. And this guy's talking about the bottom line is kids need to be in school. Please, it's hard for you not to you hate them. So the board chairman, the Board of Education, Jefferson County, this is Diane Porter. She said they're worried that they may be punished. Of course, you should be, because you will. And she says in response, they don't want them punished. She says the Jefferson County Board of Education believes that the educational interests of Jefferson County students are best served by allowing teachers to focus on their profession, including advocacy in their profession's best interests, without the fear of retribution. You have to say that, you see, because we live in a democratic society where we have a right to belong to unions, and we have the right to strike, or should have, the right to withdraw our labour, as long as it doesn't hurt the other side. And then she goes on, But the resolution says the board will try to minimize missed days. They are looking to collaborate, quote, with teachers, the Kentucky Department of Education and state legislators to make it possible for teachers to effectively exercise their rights without interruptions to student learning. Impossible. They're joining with the bosses, with the state, and with the opposition, with our enemies, to allow for the teachers who are the victims here, and of course our children. They are looking to collaborate with them. It's the team concept, like they do, like the trade union movement in general does, whether it's the AFL-CIO or the NEA. They're making a deal, trying to collaborate with them to allow them to let off steam and not disrupt anything. That's what they're doing there. And if they do, they'll have your name and address, and they'll take all sorts of measures on you. And so the superintendent, Dr. Marty Polio, says that the district is working to compile the list of names of teachers who called in sick. And then Lewis, he's the education commissioner. He says that they want doctor slips now. You see, it won't stop. And this is a statement from the governor. This is Matt Bevin. He's a right-wing religious fanatic. He says that many of the teachers called in sick didn't show up to protest. They're just lying. Isn't it something to say that about teachers? Anybody that knows what teachers do. He goes, they're not allowed to go on strike, but they are allowed to lie about being sick. And unfortunately, it's a bad example to send young people. Bevin said, the idea that you can get away with something as long as it's what you want, and you can lie if you need to in order to get what you want, is not necessarily the kind of life lesson we should be teaching. I don't like to cuss on video and in writing, but, you know, this guy sucks. You know, he's disgusting creature. This is a guy who's a Trump guy. He's a manufacturer. He's an investor and a money man. He's a parasite on humanity and on the American working people. And look at some of his platform. He thinks and has said that McConnell is not conservative enough. He wants to pass a right-wing right-to-work legislation, kick us out of pensions into the marketplace. Our pensions are pretty bad. I have a decent pension, but that's what they want to end for young people. He wants to remove state employment by 20%. Charter school and vouchers. He's against he's for shutting down Planned Parenthood. And he wants to reverse the expansion of Medicaid. This guy is scum. He's filth. And so that's what these people are up against. And what we have to realize is this. What's happened in the red states, I believe I stated that, and we've stated it before, these struggles happen with two things in mind. One, against the established leadership's desires. The leadership followed. They didn't lead in these instances. They reluctantly tagged along. They did that, and they violated the law. And they had some victories. But it's just like when you sign a contract, the next day after a strike, they're trying to figure out ways to whittle it back. They don't stop. And the situation in America is such today, with the defense bill, the 280 bases around the world, all of this garbage, building walls. It's just ridiculous. They have to drive us further down to the wages of the former colonial countries, the underdeveloped world. That's what they have to do, and that's what they're doing. Those struggles in the red states, as we said, would have been much more difficult to accomplish, and in some cases wouldn't have been accomplished if that had taken place in the blue states, where the trade union bureaucracy, which has the same worldview as the employers, suppresses militancy from below. And as this stuff's going on, and we think of it last week, people took it in, rank and file teachers took on the state and shut the bloody schools down for a decent life for themselves, for our kids, for public school teachers. It's impossible in poor rural areas, in poor urban areas, to teach kids, 30 kids in a class. In some cases, there's 4 or 5 or 6 languages. Teachers do an incredible job under difficult conditions. And you've got these people, Bevin, and people like these with his blueprint for Kentucky. You got people like these talking about they care about kids. But now the thing that's a problem here for me and what makes me angry is, as I've said before, the teachers belong to a union with 300,000 members in it. We have the AFL-CIO. It doesn't matter that they're different organizations. It doesn't matter. Instead of talking about the Latinos coming up here and building walls and they're bringing terrorists that we need to do this, and undocumented worker killed somebody or robbed somebody, it's all over the media. We should invade Iran and all. We should be invading Kentucky. The labor movement should be invading Kentucky. The labor movement with our allies should be invading Kentucky. And that's what has to happen. We cannot continue. What they learned last year, the bosses, the employers learned last year, is that they're going to have to get tough. They made a mistake in the red states, got a little overconfident. And so the thing is that we have to, the anger I feel is that here we are in this massive crisis last week in Kentucky, a state in the United States, a war going on. Where are the labor leaders? They said nothing. They do nothing. Okay, they don't say anything about these fascists, this white and nationalist killings. They're silent. The building trades leaders met with Trump, sat in there, this filthy pig. They sat in there with him, and for the governor to talk about lying, the idea that you can get away with something as long as it's what you want and you can lie and get it. He's a Trump guy. It's just an insult. This country will explode at one point. But what gets me is this. Look, we're facing two struggles. One of them is against the boss. That's the easier one. The other is against a trade union leadership that has been entrenched for decades. Yes, there's corruption. Yes, there's bribery. Yes, there's all of these things. The primary problem, though, is that they do not see any solution. They do not see any point in mobilizing this potential power against these sort of things. It can only lead to chaos. They believe in capitalism. They believe in capitalism in all its the market in all its savagery. The governor here has the right to be a manufacturer and to be an investor and do what he does. They will not challenge it. And so we're in those two struggles. And the other aspect is this: if you followed what I've been following, what's going on in Kentucky. In Kentucky, there's been an issue where I saw one of the teachers when they spoke up here. In Kentucky, in rural Kentucky, it's white and conservative. Jefferson County is quite a large black population. Louisville is in Jefferson County. And I was told that, and this is quite common in the labor movement, when there was a bit of militancy and a mobilization against the Kentucky Education Association to not get the federal government to take over the education system, and they were mobilizing around that. Some of the black teachers and black parents wanted to include in that a gang ordinance. What that means for them in their communities: stop and frisk, harassing their kids, violence, death, the shooting. The police are an occupied force in these areas. It's also probably true in poor white areas as well, but those two need to be brought together. There was not just a reluctance, but the union leadership would not take that up. They would not take that up. Every labor dispute has to become widened, generalized, and draw in our communities. And certain issues that face communities. I live near East Oakland here. There's chronic unemployment. There's no development in the way that there is in other communities. We have to take that up in every dispute. Imagine the support you'll get if that rank and file movement builds. And the last thing is this: there's thousands of people in the United States. I was active in the unions for 30 years. We had major success in my local. I can't got time to go in it here. And I'll tell you this: the two strongest fighters, three of them. One of them was like me. He was not a religious person. The other two were both Christians. I couldn't rely on we had some socialists in my union. They were worthless. I'm a socialist. But just because somebody calls themselves something, most of the left I ever got involved with completely subordinate themselves refused to challenge the Labour leadership's refusal to fight the boss and mobilise that potential power we have. Right now, you've got DSA with 50,000 members, expected to go to about 70,000, I've been hearing. They've got a meeting this Sunday where they want to talk, that I've asked to be on the panel. They want to talk about socialists in the Labour movement. I'd like to talk about that. What are they doing? If you look in the United States, there's thousands of people that are socialists, anarchists, militants, just genuine fighters. We need to be invading Kentucky, not invading Iran. Kentucky, we need to be invading. We need to ensure that this movement that started last year, in West Virginia and shocked them, they're all behind the scenes now, Democrats and Republicans, just a different gradation of how they stop it. And they're working to try to stop it. And in Kentucky now, this guy going after them is violence, and we need to stop it. So all of the left that are in unions should be waging a war in the unions, in the AFL-CIO, in the NEA. Oakland just had a strike here. There's 330,000 members of the NEA here. I think I said nationally 300,000, but there's 3 million nationally. This is what leftist, socialists, activists, anybody that wants to change the labour movement, to change it into the fighting organisations they should be, cannot do that without a conflict with the present trade union leadership, who are unwilling to do that. It's not a choice. You're going to have to do that. So anyway, I hope that's given a little bit of an update. I'll hopefully talk to you soon. Richard Miller, Facts for Working People. I hope you think about what I'm saying here, and it's of some use to people outside Kentucky, because the news in this country, to be honest with you, is pretty pathetic. They hide all of these things. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.